Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Connect, president of Universal Accounting Center. And what we do here is we discuss things to help you actually build a thriving accounting business, offering quality accounting services and getting paid what you're worth. It's here that we cover a variety of topics ranging from marketing, selling, pricing, tech stacks, training staff, client retention, mental health, and so much more. Today's going to be a wonderful conversation and one that I've been looking forward to because we're going to be discussing money, just that, money and the attitudes around it. I have a phenomenal guest, someone that I've been excited to have on the show. It's Doug Lynam. He actually is a person that you're really going to appreciate learning about. His career path has actually been quite wider, and as a roller coaster, it's taken him from a variety of things. Let me share with you why I say that. He was actually on a roller coaster designed by Salvador Dali on a sugar high from being a Marine officer candidate to actually going to a monastery before emerging from the monk life to become a financial advisor and now a best-selling author after experiencing every side of the financial coin from bankruptcy to wealth and navigating both a vow of poverty and Wall Street. Doug has actually discovered that money isn't inherently good or evil. It's a tool which impacts dividends and depends entirely on how we actually use it. So he's written a book called From Monk to Money Manager, as well as Taming Your Money Monster, 9 Paths to Money Mastery with the Enneagram. So Doug, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Roger. It's great to be here.
You know, this is going to be a lot of fun because I know that as money, we all have different relationships with it and we interact differently with it. We see it differently. As individuals, we have our own perspectives, and we're going to get into a lot of that. But I think your story is so unique, being that of a Marine, then becoming a monk, and then obviously now a financial advisor, that I'd like to start with a little bit of a backstory. Give us some context to that journey.
Yeah, it's a kind of long and wild and crazy story. I'll give you the quick highlights, but I grew up in a fairly affluent family in the Midwest outside Chicago. But when my parents divorced, from my childhood perspective, it felt like money got weaponized, and it was a tool that people used to could kind of control and manipulate, and my parents to get back at each other, kind of putting their kids in the middle as playing kind of financial chicken. Every time you needed something, one parent would tell you go ask the other, and then they would tell you no, go ask the other parent, and you kind of get stuck in the middle. And I think I developed some real money, what we call some money trauma or money wounds.
Yep.
And my brothers and I, we all rebelled in different ways and took vows of poverty through different lifestyle choices. I went off and joined a monastery. Well, first I went to the Marine Corps and then went to officer candidate school, loved it, graduated, topped my class, but then I had a bit of a spiritual awakening and then decided to go join a Benedictine monastery where I served for 20 years. But in an ironic twist of fate, I was hoping to escape the world of money and materialism forever, and also was a great way to annoy my parents and kind of rebel in an odd way. But about 3 years after I got there, the monastery went bankrupt. And the reason is because we all hated dealing with money. Like none of us wanted to really face the hard truths or look at the books in an objective way and make the meaningful changes that needed to happen. So it drove us into a real financial hole. As the junior monk in the community, I decided to take on the responsibility for solving that problem, which I did. Took a while, got good at it, started helping monastery guests with their financial struggles. Fast forward, there's a lot I'm leaving out, but fast forward 2 decades, and then I eventually decided to leave the monastery because I found I found it was a great way to be of service to the world. This was a gift I could give, and I felt like the monastery wasn't. It was too small, essentially, in terms of what I was able to do in my impact in the world. So I left there in 2016 and became an investment advisor. And then I've got these 2 books, and I'm also a business coach and keynote speaker.
You know, I think that's just fascinating. One, the upbringing that you had and how you saw money being weaponized, as you mentioned. That's something that I think a lot of us can experience in a variety of ways. But the thing that's really fascinating is to take a vow of poverty and actually see, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, and this is what I'm hoping to get some clarification on, is sometimes wealth is then seen as a sin, an evil, something bad. The wealthy man struggles to get into heaven, perhaps. And what we're trying to say is that the poor are the meek ones. So all of a sudden, we're putting this negative connotation on money, and a lot of people are raised that way. And all of a sudden, as accounting professionals, that's what we're working with. That's what we're interacting with. It's what we're helping our clients with. And yet some of us have this stigma that we're dealing with at a subconscious level, perhaps, that may cause us to be wealth adverse.
Right.
So I'd like to just talk about what are some of those psychological things that some people have that inhibit their ability to be wealthy and utilize money as a tool.
Yeah, well, in my first book, From Monk to Money Manager, I kind of go into depth into some of the Christian theology that may be holding us back and
Yeah.
reframing it in a modern context to look at what those passages really meant in the ancient Greek, which I've studied,
Mhm.
and then also looking at it in the historical context of its time. And when you think about it, back in the time of Jesus, like we didn't have capitalism had not been invented yet, free markets had not been invented yet, corporations had not been invented yet. So really, it was more of a zero sum environment where basically it was a slave economy of one sort of feudal system, one sort or another. So for one person to become wealthy back in those days, you almost always had to oppress somebody else. And in a modern economy, it's no longer zero sum. No one has to suffer for me to earn, save, and ethically invest my money. So a lot of those sort of not saying there can't be problems around money, but the idea that the love of money is the root of all evil. Well,
Yeah.
that really stuck in my head, and also the passage from Matthew, I think, where Jesus says, if you want to be perfect, sell everything, give it away,
Yes.
and come follow me. And I took that very literally, and maybe I should or shouldn't have is another question. But when you're, as a chronic perfectionist, I thought that's me. I wealthy family kid. I want to be perfect. Let's do this. Um, but what I learned down the road is that money, it's not good or evil. It's a tool. It's like a hammer that you can use to whack yourself on the thumb or build something beautiful.
Yes.
And really, the choice is yours. And what I also discovered living in poverty and going through bankruptcy is that the suffering and stress of being poor is unrelenting. And that really does a devastating things to your mental health. And it also disempowers you. It leaves you without the tools you need to function in a modern society in order to affect positive change. So unless you've mastered the art of multiplying loaves and fishes, right? If you want to feed the hungry or clothe the naked, you're going to need some money in your pocket. And the wealthier you are, and the more you align that with your highest values, the more powerfully you can be a force for good in the world.
Wonderfully said. Your explanation of the history of the economy, the zero sum as it related to pre-capitalism, is very appropriate to understand how money was perhaps seen by then. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, you're looking at individuals with this idea of it's either they have it or I have it. It's not that we can both have it. And I think that's been replaced today by an abundance mentality. It's the fact that we both can succeed. We both can have, and more importantly, succeed with these financial wealths that we're talking about. And then complementing that, one of the things that I think would be very important to understand is you can't give what you don't have. And so if you want to bless others and help others, you need to, in essence, acquire it yourself so that you can impart of it. So one of the things that I think is important is those two distinctions now as we look at it's okay to have money. It is a tool. It's a medium through which we can actually accomplish a lot of good. So with that context, I know in your book you talk of and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, an Enneagram. What is that really referring to? And help my audience understand from an accounting perspective how that might apply.
Yeah, well, it's called the Enneagram. So Ennea in Greek means nine, and gram means drawn. So it's these nine archetypal personality patterns that we draw. I draw them on a circle. So if you think of a color wheel and you break it into nine pie slices, and again, I think the color wheel metaphor works because, but think of it like this way: your the reason it's important, it's really important for you to know for yourself to understand your own issues around
Uh-huh.
money. It's also really helpful to understand your clients' issues around money.
Yes.
And I've also found it a great marketing tool, not because I'm talking about the Enneagram to clients, but once I identify in my mind at least what their type is or have some idea around what it is, their greatest unconscious fear. And I know what they're really looking for on a deep psychological level behind whatever product or service you're offering, and then how to tailor my pitch to sort of soothe that core wound that they have in their psyche. And now let me explain really quickly. I'll give you just a quick summary of the Enneagram, and it's a very complicated system, but essentially think of it like maybe I could use a car metaphor. If you
Okay.
think about cars, there's an infinite variety of cars out there, and
Mhm.
the one that you drive has a very unique year, make, and model. But you can sort of lump cars into what we call archetypal patterns. Like
Yeah.
there's sports cars, there's SUVs, there's compact cars. And so it doesn't mean I know everything about you or everything about, your personality, but essentially there's only so many ways to design an ego. And we know this from both neurobiology and from childhood developmental psychology, that there's these basic imprinting patterns that happen in childhood, that we develop these core coping or defense mechanisms to protect our childhood psyche from the biggest threats in our childhood environment. And then there's a pattern to it, and I could walk you through how that pattern works. But the punchline is, once I know what your ego defenses are, I kind of know the car of the ego you're driving around in, the lens essentially you're viewing reality and filtering it through, and then what that deepest motivation or fear is that you have, that you're trying to soothe throughout your life. And now I can help you manage that through my product or my service, also through the money management tool.
I find it fascinating that you're able to identify these 9 archetypes, because it is something that we each in our youth experience. And because of those different things that we might have as parenting and so forth, we come up with this very, very emotional relationship with money. I'd be curious what mine would be, only because of the fact that you spoke of having been raised in a wealthy environment. I was raised in a very poor environment. And so money was perhaps seen differently. I was perhaps under that context of, it doesn't grow on trees. It's not abundant. It's not readily available. You have to hustle to get it. You have to work hard to acquire it. And then once you get it, you want to hold on to it and you don't want to let it go, kind of a thing. So I'm wondering how that might differ from other individuals as they're actually working and striving in their business. But the relevant nature of this is beyond just ourselves.
Yeah.
It's the clients that we're working with and how they interact with their monies, the risks that they're willing to take within their companies financially, what they're willing to do with the profits as they're acquiring them. So there's a lot of dynamics going on here. Can you help us understand maybe some of those different personality types so that we might be able to associate with one of them?
Yeah, let's if we could play with you just for a minute, if you're
Yeah,
willing to be put on the spot, if you're willing to
please.
be very, very vulnerable.
Happy to
This
be vulnerable.
this can get really deep, or I can pick on myself.
No, no, let's do me. I'm happy to learn.
All right, so figuring out someone's Enneagram type is a very complicated process.
Okay,
It takes a lot of time. I can't guarantee we're going to nail it on the head in just a few minutes, but let me start with one question, and this is going to require some real deep introspection.
please.
But if you just take a pause, a moment, maybe just take a deep breath and settle in and think for just a moment. Now, in your darkest emotional moments, when life gets really hard for you, right? And particularly think about your teenage years, your 20s, because as we mature, we grow, we learn, we can update our survival strategies essentially as we mature. But the core pattern still holds. So there's 3 core negative emotions in all mammals, right? And this goes from the work of the affective neuroscientist Jaak Panksepp. But I want you to think about which of these 3 core negative emotions you tend to feel more of in those dark moments. So do you tend to feel more anger? Do you tend to feel more sort of grief or shame? So grief, shame is kind of one possibility. Or do you tend to have more fear? So anger, grief, shame, or fear, did one of those seem to show up more in your emotional life?
I'm going to probably lean into say grief or shame.
Okay. All right. So now this is where it gets really tricky. There's so if that's true, then presumably the way you were disciplined, the way you were raised, for whatever reason, you felt maybe having a harder time. So would you say that one of your that what you really value then is connection and validation from people? That's some sort of that relational nature is something that is very important to you. Maybe that's a bit of a sidebar. Let me just
Okay.
stay on point. Okay, so if you have this grief or shame, there's 3 ways your childhood self could deal with that. You could either internalize it, directing it at yourself, which would be what we call a type 4, and they're called the individualist. And the type 4 is someone whose greatest fear is not having a unique identity. So they feel a lot of grief or shame about they don't feel like they have a place in the world. So they're always trying to stand out and feel unique and different. So they often make great artists and iconoclasts like Steve Jobs and others. So that's one option. I want you to just sit with that. I'm going to give you two more.
Okay.
And let's see which one might land more deeply. Then the other option would be you could take that pain and you can externalize it. And what that means is we get call them a type 2. I call them the helper, or if we stick with our car metaphors, call them the ambulance of egos, because what they struggle with is their greatest fear is that they're fundamentally unlovable. So they tend to be very helpful, they're very warm and very kind, but they tend to overextend themselves helping other people because they're always looking for that validation and security that they're trying to assuage about how they think that they perceive themselves.
Okay.
And then there's a third choice, and that would be in the middle. That'd be type 3, between 2 and 4. And so they have both this internalized shame, so they feel insecure about how they perceive themselves. They have this externalized shame or grief, which means they're ashamed about how they think other people perceive them. And that stereophonicness, it creates their greatest fear of not having of being worthless, that they don't have any value in the world. So they tend to be the high achievers. I call them the race car of egos, because they're always trying to get to the next finish line, win the next goal. So they're also looking for validation and connection. But think of it this way: for a 3, if I run a marathon and I come in first place, it forces you to applaud me. Like I'm winning that validation through my achievements.
Yeah.
So that's a quick summary of the shame triad. See if either of those 3 might resonate with you: feeling more unlovable, feeling more worthless, or feeling like you don't have a place or identity in the world.
In my youth, it would have been the worthless.
Yeah.
I think you said it was the fourth.
That would be 3, right?
Well, it was the second one you mentioned.
Oh, that would be the helper.
Yeah.
The not feeling lovable.
Yes.
So the not feeling lovable, that would be the type 2, the helper, who's very
External. You were
externally. They're looking
Yes.
for that through trying to win love. Like
Yes.
if I help you and I tell you you're wonderful, you'll love me back. You'll help
Yeah.
me back. You'll give me that validation in return because of my helpfulness.
Well, this is interesting. You're diving deep into my youth, and honestly, I think this is right. I've never been psychoanalyzed before, so perhaps this is right.
Okay, so if you're a type 2, if that is your Enneagram type, and again, let's hold that very lightly for now.
Yeah.
And if we, when you meet people, there's what we called, what was it? So discernment of spirits is what the Bible phrases it. But there's a energy that each type tends to have. And if we were in person and we had a couple hours together, you start to feel the energy of this person and how they're approaching reality. And it gets easy, or when we're one-on-one, to be able to feel that vibe off of somebody,
Okay.
kind of know how you might approach them. But for a type 2, then we've got money monsters for each of these types. So there's 9 types, but there's 2 money monsters for each type.
Okay.
So I'm layering on top of the Enneagram what I call the attachment theory of money. And it's almost identical to the attachment theory of relationships, if any of your listeners are familiar with that. If they're not, what it basically says is that there's 2 unhealthy ways we can relate to money. And of course, what we want to get you to is a healthy, secure relationship. That's the
Of
goal.
course.
But the 2 unhealthy ways are: you can either be anxiously attached to money, meaning you're too obsessed about it, maybe from your childhood, right? Growing up in poverty, money doesn't grow on trees, being very worried and hyper concerned about money all the time. And that can be helpful in some ways, but it can also tip into dangerous territory. Think Ebenezer Scrooge, or if you watch the show Succession or Billions,
Mhm.
what you see are people whose desire for wealth is causing suffering for themselves and for others around them. So it can become a dangerous, obsession if it's taken too far. And then on the flip side of that, what I call the avoidant personality style, where because of all the shame or all the grief or all the anger, fear, whatever your type is, it brings up all these negative emotions for you. So you tend to be avoidant around money, procrastinate on paying your bills, not saving, not investing, never really taking the time to become financially literate and giving your financial life the mindfulness and the attention that it deserves. And then, so if we look at for a type 2, then if we look at the avoidant style, let's see, for type 2, would be what I call the bleeder, right? So there's two types. I call them the bleeder and the bonder. If
Okay.
you work with this, am I tracking so far? Have I gotten too far off? Can
No,
you still?
you're good. Finish where you're going with this, and then
All
I'm
right.
going to comment on it.
All right. So the two money monsters for the two would be the bleeder, who bleeds out their time and their talent and their treasure helping other people, neglecting their own needs, or what I call the bonder, where they have resources, but they give in a weird way. They kind of create indentured servitude. They're in the person.
Hmm.
It's like, I'm going to give you this, but I'm expecting something back. There's
Okay.
strings attached to it that creates a kind of codependency that twos can get trapped in.
Interesting.
And then there's a whole other level to this, which we'll get to, but I'll stop there.
Perfect. Well, the thing that's interesting here is obviously you were asking some questions to help me reflect on my youth and
Mhm,
maybe make a choice as to how I might have dealt with or coped
mhm,
with certain situations. And the thing I would offer at this point is in my 20s, I had a significant shift, perhaps a 180 of sorts, where I went from being a pessimist to being an optimist. And
mhm,
it took a few years, but that transition took me from scarcity to an abundance mindset,
mhm,
took me from being negative and depressed to being very optimistic and very giving, if you will. And so even in asking those questions, I could see some of those things in my past, but I can't identify with them any longer. And the other thing I'd mention is as it relates to money, although some of the things that we were discussing or you were sharing a moment ago did make sense, I could relate to them from a money point of view, I very much hoarded money. I
mhm,
saw the comparison between objects or material things and money. I wanted money all the time. I
mhm,
was very much reluctant to cash checks. When I cashed them, I'd save them.
mhm,
I was not one to go buy a soda. I wasn't one to go to the movies.
mhm,
I was very much one that was more inclined to save, save, save. And I think that still held true. It's interesting running a business as I do now, where I'm more inclined personally to save money. Uh, let's say I'm money conscious. However, in a business context, I spend money like crazy all day long with the amount of spending in payroll and advertising and materials. So it's almost like it's a Jekyll and Hyde kind of a thing.
yeah,
Personally, I act one way. Professionally, I'm totally the opposite with the investments that I do and so forth. So it's kind of interesting to hear you describe those things and
yeah,
see which of those related or resonated with me, only because of the fact that I see myself as two distinct type of people.
mhm,
Personally, I'm much more interested in retaining the money. I don't see the worth in the material things. I see things as being too expensive, especially with the recent inflations.
mhm,
Where financially on the business side, I see the need to invest. I need to spend. It
mhm.
takes money to make money. So I'm going through that motion of actually trying to see what I can do to churn more out of it. So two different, it's kind of like a dichotomy, if you will.
Yeah. Let me ask you one clarifying question, because I'm
Yeah.
not sure we've got your type nailed down exactly.
Yeah.
Mm, do you adapt really well to environment? Do you tend to well, do you have a constant to-do list in your head? Are you always kind of on the go with a looking to get you more focused on doing than being? That you always have this sort of need to be on the go doing stuff and kind of checking off a checklist all the time?
Oh, wow, excellent question. So I guess two parts to that. Do I adapt well to
Mhm,
different environments? Very well.
mhm,
I'm very adaptable to different situations and scenarios, so that's very comfortable to me.
mhm.
As for the um, busyness side of things, I'm very fine being by myself, doing my own little thing, but I am mentally always busy. There's always something going on. There's
Yeah.
always some project or something I'm trying to resolve or fix, something that I'm planning. So, yeah, very busy in that
So
context.
very goal oriented.
Very much so.
So your goal. So if I would to say you're more goal oriented, and you tend to adapt very easily to different new circumstances. You
Mhm.
can walk into a room and read the room and kind of, subtly change your persona to fit the environment that you're in as
Very
need.
much so.
Okay. So I think you might be a 3. I think we've got you mistyped.
Okay.
And that, but I'm not, again, we have to hold this lightly.
Oh,
There's
of course.
actually a really good test you can take online. It's called the IEQ-9. It's about an hour and we can get a more assessment, but and the reason I'm suggesting 3, only because I'm trying to just how you present yourself
Of
has
course.
a sort of three-ish vibe to it. So, um, So that makes more sense to me from what you're describing. How you're relating to money, because the 3 is going to be very different from a 2.
Okay.
Because the 3 is that achiever, because you're sort of looking for that money to give you that security in life. You're looking for it to give you that uh, sense of maybe value in life, or worthiness, that if I have all this stuff, I'll be okay.
Well, I can actually speak to that. One of the things that I remember from my youth is always lacking or
Mhm.
wanting. And when you're, as a child, going to a parent and always asking for something, I quickly learned they didn't have. And so it wasn't worth even asking for. And to kind of resolve or find that in my adult life, I could provide the means wherein I wouldn't be in that situation and that I could do more and I could offer my own children more. That was very much a driving force in trying to say, okay, what skills and talents have I been given that I can enhance and put myself in a position where I'm not needing other people to assist or help me. I'm not dependent on anyone else. And I
Right.
think that independence has been very
Yes.
driving. If I could put myself in a position where I'm able to give rather than take, it's very important to me. I'd rather be the person who has more that I can offer more than the person that's always in want.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then once you understand that about yourself, and once you kind of understand what your kind of the core wounds you're trying to soothe through your money, or through your accomplishments, or through your career,
Mhm.
then it just gives you a lens to understand where you might get tripped up. And for Yeah, and then also, if you know that for your clients, you can see it really clearly in their patterns when they show up. Not always, it's not easy to read people with this stuff, but once you
Yeah.
get there's some that are really obvious and really easy to identify. And once you know that, it's like, okay, now I know what you're really looking for from my advisory services. Like, what does this money mean to you
Yeah.
on a deep level? And then I can actually help address those core emotional wounds, besides something beyond just the spreadsheet and the numbers. It's like, all right, this is where we need to get you, so you feel good about your money, and you can sleep well at night, beyond just having a certain dollar amount in the account.
Yeah. I'm really loving this conversation because I think it's fascinating, especially from an accounting point of view, to see what others do with their money.
Mhm.
And, we're talking about it from a financial advisor point of view as well, perhaps. But the point is people have these different relationships with money, how they see it, how they perceive using it, and so forth. I'd like to share a story with you very quickly and get your take on it. There was an interview being done with a number of billionaires.
Mhm.
And in the conversation with these different billionaires, some of them were speaking to, at some point, they wanted to give a lot of their wealth to humanitarian projects. They
Mhm.
wanted to somehow kind of give it away rather than giving it to their posterity. They wanted to gift it out and find those different causes that they can embrace, that they could actually give the money to.
Mhm.
One said something powerful, in my opinion. They said they weren't going to be doing that, and that intentionally they were going to continue to grow the businesses that they were involved in. And
Mhm.
they said something that I thought was quite interesting. They said rather than giving simply the wealth that they had to others who were in need, they were going to provide opportunities through their employments
Mhm.
that enabled individuals to develop skills through which they could be compensated for doing. And they felt that they were doing as much, if not more, good in the world by providing business opportunities and employment opportunities and product development, service development services that enabled them to kind of trickle the money down that way rather than gifting it away. And I was fascinated how it's the same dollar. They're each looking at the same dollar. One's choosing to give it away, the other one's choosing to invest it and
Mhm.
cause it to kind of duplicate itself. And I thought that perspective was quite impactful, especially in the context of the interview. What would you say to that type of a discussion?
Oh, I think it's brilliant. I think it's a great way to approach it. It's a very creative and innovative solution, because you're empowering people. Because direct charity is good, nothing wrong with that. But sometimes, what you really need to do is incentivize people
Mhm.
to be able to pull themselves up, and then really reward their own success. And again, businesses, if you have a good business, right, it's designed to solve a pain point, and that's an act of service in the world.
Yeah.
So to think of your business as your form of service, that also gives you that higher purpose and calling to really, motivate you to make it the best practice that it can possibly be. Because I really believe it. If we're in the finance industry, what I think I do, and I hope others maybe feel this way as well, is really, I'm a suffering prevention specialist. I'm
Okay.
preventing the suffering that comes from poor financial decisions, because when you make bad choices, you don't just lose the dollar amount. You're losing your capacity to be of service in the world,
Mhm.
and you're creating a lot of stress for yourself and the people around you. So I think the more you can lift people up, the better. I think that's brilliant.
That's good. So this is a great way to segue into how do business owners typically then sabotage themselves with success as it relates to these different thought patterns?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a bit too big to cover right here, because it really depends on your Enneagram type.
Okay.
Um, so again, the Enneagram, basically, it's that ego lens that you're viewing all of reality from, and then of course it's going to uh, affect everything you do, including your relationship to your family, to your money, to your business. And so if you know your type, and again, we were talking about the surface level here. This is very superficial, uh, what I'm presenting, because it's if you have to think of the Enneagram like a fractal. A fractal is a geometric pattern that goes down infinitely with infinite variety inside of a very firm structure. And so we're talking about the top layer of this pattern here, and it goes down into subtypes, and it gets very nuanced. And so it really is going to, I think, where you're going to get trapped is perhaps in, I would need a specific example, and maybe I could pull one up for you. Maybe I'll use myself as an example,
Okay.
right? So where I can get stuck in my Enneagram type is in that need to achieve and to perform for others, that I'm really looking for that external validation. And so my ego gets tied up in my identity with the business. And so uh, uh, work failures feel like a personal failure on a
Ah,
deep level. And so it can be very devastating when you go for the sale and you don't get it, or clients aren't happy, something goes wrong. You're gonna take that and maybe internalize it a little bit too much, and you can get yourself in emotional trouble that way. Or putting too much of, for me, it's like putting too much of your identity into the status symbol and the image that you're presenting to the world. And then it can be a bit of a mirage, right? That you're not being your authentic self. You're losing the capacity for authentic connection with your clients and with your employees. And so that's one way that my type shows up in a work environment of being able to sort of self-sabotage
yeah.
by not having that authenticity, authentic connection that people really uh, demand or want or looking for in any service that they're being offered.
Exactly. No, that's very interesting. I find that fascinating. So, I've got a few questions that I want to quickly ask you because I think this is going to be a good full circle to our conversation. I have to ask, with the upbringing that you had, where you came from a wealthy background, you went through a vow of poverty. Here you are, a financial advisor working with individuals regarding their wealth and their finances. What is your attitude about money now and wealth?
Well, like I said, money, again, it's not good or evil. It's simply a tool, and so it depends on how we choose to use it in our lives. And if we're aligning our business practices and our finances with our highest values, then it becomes the thing through because you can't do anything in a modern economy without money in your pocket. We
Yeah.
can't have this conversation without the electricity, the technology, and the money to make this a moment happen. You're not going to be able to get in your car and drive anywhere without putting gas in your tank.
Yeah.
So you're going to need money to do anything. And so when you're aligning your money with your personal mission,
Yes.
what is my purpose in life? Then the rest of your life sort of it's like a domino effect. Everything sort of aligns, and then everything's easier because as Simon said, you have your why. Like, why am I doing this? What is my higher goal and self? And then money is that great tool to actualize and realize your dreams and your hopes, and then make the world a better place around you through your business, through your family, through acts of service. So I think it's the most powerful tool we have for love and service when used appropriately, and that's really how I view it now. And that I think you disempower yourself when you reject the power of money. You disempower yourself and lose the ability to be as effective and as meaningful in life as I think you were meant put as you were put on this planet to be.
Yeah, well said. It is the means to so many ends. Then, if those ends are good and worthwhile, they can be achieved. So that's wonderfully said. As it relates to gratitude, what are you grateful for?
What am I grateful for? I'm grateful for my family right now. My mom, especially. She's getting a little older, and so I'm helping her out quite a bit, and she's helping me out quite a bit. I think I'm really grateful for. We haven't been near each other most of our adult lives. We've lived on other sides of the country, and now we're right nearby to each other. And so I'm really grateful for her. I'm really grateful for my older brother, who's been a great friend and support. I have a twin brother, and he's always been my best friend, and so I'm grateful for him. And I'm grateful for my business and my clients, and the opportunity to do the thing that I love, and have the freedom. You know, the great thing about money is what it can provide for you most of all is time,
Yeah.
right? That you're not grinding for that paycheck every day. You're not doing something that you hate doing because you need that you need that job, but you can actually be making money doing what you love. So I'm grateful for all of those things.
That's beautiful. Wonderfully said. Well, I'm going to wrap this up if I may. And in doing so, I'm going to come back to you for a closing thought. But one of the things that I want to point out to my listeners is that Doug's offered something here that I'd love to invite you to take advantage of. As we mentioned at the beginning, he has written some books, one of which is Taming Your Money Monster: 9 Paths to Money Mastery with Enneagram. And you can go get a copy of this in the episode description. We have a link for you to actually take advantage of that. So definitely do that. And in doing so, learn what it is that perhaps is your archetype and how you actually see and interact with money and so forth. So I think this would be a great exercise for you and perhaps other family members and such. As it relates to the podcast, I also want to invite you to participate in the Accountrepreneurs Challenge. This is a 90-day challenge that's been developed by Universal Accounting Center to help you both personally and professionally address those things that are related to building the premier accounting firm in your area. It's the Accountrepreneurs Challenge that will come with weekly activities, things that may take you 5-10 minutes one week, maybe another week, an hour. These challenges are intended to actually help you address things personally and professionally, one of which actually happens to be a personal finance discussion. It is exactly this, a conversation regarding money and what you should consider as you work with your own personal finances and those of your clients. And so I invite you to sign up for the Accountrepreneurs Challenge and join with that. The other happens to be that of GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference where we get together with the owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses to hear from the experts what it is we can be doing to work on our business. It's here you get to hear from the experts, but as well interact with your peers and see what it is that they're doing to successfully run, operate, and service their clients in providing bookkeeping, accounting, and tax services. You get to make great connections, collaborate with them, build some friendships, and then lastly, meet myself and my team here who are committed at Universal Accounting to help you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal Accounting. So sign up now, register, and I look forward to seeing you at GrowCon. Now, as it relates to this conversation, one of the things that really excited me about the conversation I knew I was going to have with Doug is I believe we all have these different personas as it relates to our interactions with money. And to hear him start by sharing his journey of being a Marine and then becoming a monk and then now actually a financial advisor, I think is a powerful journey to show exactly how that could actually be impacting his view of finances. I mean, to take a vow of poverty and then obviously work with financial wealth is really a dichotomy, but he's very good at articulating how that is so possible today because of what we were looking at earlier. One, the personality types that we each have because of our upbringing and how we see money. But more importantly, it's those stereotypical things that we see in society as to maybe through that Christian paradigm of whether or not it's good or bad, something that's going to inhibit us with our spiritual growth. But he addressed all of those. We talked about how capitalism didn't exist then, and it is actually the root of the economy today, and it's the means through which we can achieve so much. I thought that was a very powerful kind of learning for the conversation today. I enjoyed his asking questions of me personally to kind of help me unravel a few of my thought processes and figure out what it is that keeps me ticking as it relates to my interactions with money and being motivated. I thought it was also very important to understand that with regards to money, there are things that we perhaps are sabotaging ourselves with that inhibit our ability to take advantage of the money. And all of a sudden, these monsters come out and actually hold us back from the successes that we are entitled to have. We have every right to experience. And that's where I'd like to just bring up that thing that we mentioned midway through the conversation about abundance. And you have to have in order to be able to give. I think those are two very important principles to understand today, that this net zero sum isn't a way to necessarily view the world today. There is enough abundance out there that we can literally all be successful and rewarded. Now, the other thing that I thought was also helpful with Doug's explanation is towards the end, he spoke of his gratitude for family, his mother. I think those things are very important because family is the root of so much happiness. And I think it's important that he's been able to find that connection and go there. So lots of good takeaways from this. Doug, what would you like to end with the show?
Oh, just gratitude for having me on the show. And if anyone wants to reach out, you can find me on my website at douglynam.com, DOUGLYNAM. I'd be happy to have a conversation with anybody who would like to explore their money monsters or is looking for an investment advisor.
I love that, Doug. Well, thank you for coming on the show. As it relates to the podcast, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. We'd love to have you subscribe and learn those various things each and every week that we share that help us actually better service our clients and, in fact, build the premier accounting firm. So if you haven't already, subscribe and set the notifications so that weekly you can get notified as to each new episode. As it relates to the show itself, we do actually have a number of archived episodes that I would invite you to listen to, things that are specific to your current situation. We've prepared highlights or playlists that you can type or dive into and binge listen if you'd like to hear from the experts relating to specific subjects that are relevant to you today. You can go to universalaccounting.com and in the navigation of the website, go to the podcast section and there find the highlights where you can actually look at playlists related to marketing, selling, tech stacks, training your staff, client retention, so many things that I'm sure you'll find fascinating and relevant to your current situation. So go binge listen those today. Also, I want to bring up again GrowCon. Love to have you register if you haven't already to join us for that conference. It's a wonderful event where you actually get to work on your business, step away from the day-to-day routines and do the things that you need to do to make this the best year ever. And for that, I invite you to GrowCon and I look forward to seeing you there. As our sponsor, Universal Accounting, if you'd like more information regarding these topics and the things that we've covered, the various programs that are offered by Universal Accounting, such as becoming a profit and growth expert, a professional tax preparer, a professional bookkeeper offering quality accounting services. Check out those programs by going to universalaccountingschool.com or giving us a phone call at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care, have a great day, and be safe out there. Doug, that was awesome.
Thanks, Roger.
I enjoyed the conversation. That was very insightful. I hope it was what you were expecting.
Yeah, I wish we didn't quite nail your type exactly, but it was fun to try.
It was a good try. It got me thinking on a few things, so that was nice. As it relates to this, I'm going to have you now record that promo piece that I was mentioning a moment ago.
Is this video or audio?
Both? It's going to be audio, but the camera is on right now. But the point is that you can just read it.
Oh, this is where it's
in the private chat.
Oh,
you'll see the script right there.
Great.
So when you're ready.
Okay. This is Doug Lynam, and it was amazing to record with Roger an episode of Build. Let me try that again. I'll get this. One take. This is Doug Lynam, and it was fantastic to record with Roger an episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. We discussed a wide range of subjects about how you can use money as a tool for love and service, overcome your money monsters, those things that will sabotage your relationship to finances, help you identify your customers and serve them better. And I invite you to join us and listen. Thank you so much.
Very good. All right. So